businesses and entrepreneurship within First. There's actually a lot of different businesses that people are starting and running to help make First a better place, a better culture. So I'm gonna tell you the story about AndyMark. We'll talk about some things, and if you have a question, please ask. And I'm gonna leave some time at the end for some questions also. Okay, so first of all, before I'm a businessman, I'm a husband and a father and a mentor. These things are what drive me to be a good businessman. But without these four women, I would not be here. Without their support, my wife's sitting back there in the back, and my three daughters are all Firsters, all First alumni. One of them is a game announcer on a field here this weekend, and I'm very proud of the fact that First has been a great program for them to grow up within. They've had great role models and mentors within the First program. So Mark Coors and I started AndyMark. We started in 2004. Mark passed away a year and a half ago. We all miss Mark. He retired from AndyMark in 2016. Back then, that was probably about when we started. We were pretty cocky. We didn't know what we didn't know. We made a lot of mistakes. We had a lot of successes, and hopefully I'm going to tell you about those. So our timeline here, I made this a couple days ago, but I've been involved with First since 1992. I was lucky enough to sit down at my first job when I was 22 years old, and the guy next to me was the lead designer on the Science Cats, which later became the Techno Cats. I didn't join the Techno Cats until 1998, but I was able to view First since the first year. So I was in the right place at the right time. That's a key with a lot of people's success, by the way, being in the right place at the right time. I got on TechnoCats, and then I started, with a lot of help, Cybertooth, and now I'm back on TechnoCats Team 45 as a mentor this past year. During that time, I was working as an engineer at Delphi, as was Mark. We were both engineers. Delphi was a large automotive suppliers company, and we started AndyMark in 2004. We started out of our two little houses with our wives helping us, and then we moved into a different building in 2007, different building in 2011, and a bigger warehouse where we are right now in 2018. And I'll talk about the details of those things. Before I get into the details of AndyMark, you really got to know where First was back in there. Who was around in First in like 1999, 2000? A couple of you guys, yes, thank you guys, friends. So back then, in the early days, you could only build your robot with a limited mechanical parts kit. It was kind of like you have these parts only, and you could build a robot out of those parts. In 2000, actually in 1999, IFI or VEX, they introduced electrical parts specifically designed for FRC. So before then, we were using just any parts we could find in the market to build a robot with. In 2000, the floodgates opened up mechanically, and we could start using extrusions or materials from anywhere, Home Depot, doesn't matter, to make your mechanical portions of your robot. In 2000 and 2004, an interesting thing that was happening is there were a lot of sharing of designs, mainly mechanical designs. In the summer, after a season was done, you see a lot of sharing of mechanical designs and how a gearbox was designed, or how a lift system, or how an omni wheel was designed, because none of these things were available in the market. There weren't planetary gearboxes or omni wheels or Mechanum wheels to buy anywhere. So all that stuff you had to make yourself. In 2002 and 2004, First put out a kit chassis. It stunk, but it was a try. We had these helical gears that were ridiculous. You guys remember it. It was bad. Back then, all of that added up to, there was a huge gap between the Wild Stang, 118, Chief Delphi teams with high resources, and the low teams with boxes on wheels that, I swear, couldn't move. Talk about lack of inspiration. When you build a robot and it just couldn't move because you couldn't figure out your drivetrain, that was not a good culture to be in. These amazingly good, well-engineered robots versus these boxes on wheels that couldn't move. And the team would cheer when it would start to drive. It was kind of sad. So those of us, old folks in First, we had to do something about it. So a few things happened. The kit parts chassis became a high-quality chassis in 2005, and that helped teams with the boxes on wheels be a competitive group of teams. Also, Mark and I started AndyMark in the fall of 2004, and we started offering Omni wheels. We had a 2-speed shifter transmission because the motors were less powerful back then. AM Planetary was the first planetary gearbox that fit anywhere a sim motor fit. So you only could use like 2 or 4 sim motors on your robot. Everywhere else you had to use a different motor. But that planetary motor kind of could convert like a 550 or a 775 motor into a sim motor the way it was mounted. So that worked pretty well. That was a predecessor of the VersaPlanetary, the Sport gearbox, all the other planetaries that are out now. We had high traction wheels, which are kind of the predecessor for a lot of the rough top or wedge top type wheels or the high grip wheels that are out there. We had aluminum sprockets. Before 2005, if you were going to get an aluminum sprocket on your robot, you had to go to the go-kart manufacturers and figure out how their aluminum sprockets, which are usually too big to fit on your robot. The steel sprockets were out there, but no one wants steel sprockets because they're too heavy, right? We called them trick wheels, but the trick wheel was a predecessor for any other Omni wheel out there. There were teams that had Omni wheels, really good ones on their robot, but they couldn't buy them. They just made their own Omni wheel. So imagine the process of every year making your own Omni wheel. There's Omni wheels on robots since 97, 96 maybe. So there are some teams that made their own Omni wheels for almost 10 years. So we start this company, and there's a big discussion on Chief Delphi. It's still there. You can look at it, AndyMark.biz. It talks about the beginnings of AndyMark and how it might be fair or not fair to teams. That's another discussion. But we knew something was up when a team, I don't know who these people are. It's a mentor and 3 young ladies. I think it's from New York City. They place an order. They give us their credit card order. They pay hundreds and hundreds. This was probably a $600 or $700 order. And they say thank you to us. That was weird. They're giving me money, and they say thank you. So we're like, we're on to something here. This is interesting. So in the beginning, we started AndyMark. Mary was raising 3 daughters at home. Emily, Mark's wife, was working at Pizza Hut as an accountant. So it was really the 4 of us that worked together at AndyMark. Mark and I, engineering, manufacturing, organization of manufacturing. We outsourced all of our parts. Mary would work on customer service and shipping. Emily would work on accounting. 2004. We didn't pay ourselves one dime until 2007. So think about that. The first 3 years of a small business, you don't pay yourself. It's hard. A lot of places, if you talk to entrepreneurs, they say, well, you're going to work on your business for 1 year before you start paying yourselves. It took us 3 years. So that means we had to keep our day jobs. I had to keep my job at Delphi. Mark did too. Emily did. And Mary was working with our girls at home. So that was the hardest part. That's why that's red. That was very difficult. I'm a big football fan. I would be watching football games and assembling Omni wheels during the football games. I'd be working on a computer, and Mary would be debugging 2-speed transmissions in the kitchen, and I would tell her if it was good or not by what I heard the transmission sound like. If it had a knock in it, I'd say, bring it back in, I need to debug it. She would plug it into the power supply in the kitchen, and if it was smooth, I'd say, good, let's ship it. So pretty crazy things. In 2007, we got big enough where I could quit my job. But right before I did that, I was like, how do I know? When do you know that you can leave your job, your salary, good, automotive paying job, to run your business full time? Any thoughts on that? Ideas? When do you know? Yes. Okay, I did. Good point. Thank you. But what I did was I just treated my salary as a bill, like a monthly like electric bill or rental bill. So if the company could cash flow my salary, then I could leave and I could go have AndyMark pay my salary. Because I was still the sole supporter of the family. So I had to cash flow my salary in order for that to happen. And so we did that, and actually Emily, Mark's wife, left her job and worked for us full-time. So Emily and I were our first 2 full-time employees. We moved out of our houses. We moved into a small technology park in Kokomo, and our first suite in Kokomo in that technology park was about half as big as this room. So we did all order fulfillment, all shipping, all CAD design, assembly in a room about half the size of this room. And we hired part-time kids from the Technocats to be our assembly crew. They were great. Our daughters made assembly videos with us because we knew we couldn't make a quality assembly video, so we put our kids in it, and it was kind of a joke, but people would tell us later on that I love your videos with your daughters doing the assembly videos, because I tell my high school kids, if those little junior high kids can do these assemblies, you can too. And if you look at old AndyMark videos, you still see my daughters on these assembly videos. They're quite embarrassed by that still. Another milestone was 2009. Anything weird about 2009? You guys remember 2009? Yes. Well, yes, we had a recession. That was tough. That's not my point. But anything else with the game in 2009? Lunacy, slick surface. So I get this call from First, and they say, we want you to bid on being the supplier of the slick wheel for all of FRC. And by the way, we're going to mandate this wheel. And all these, by this time we had Mechanum wheels, we had high traction wheels, we had Omni wheels. We did pretty good business with those wheels. I don't know. At the time, maybe it was 25% of my business, right? And they said, well, you're going to get an opportunity to sell this new wheel. And I'm thinking, oh, crap, that's going to be a cheap wheel. We make good money on some of these higher priced wheels. I'm in trouble. We're going to lose this revenue. What do we do? So we decided to really make a strong effort to be a distributor of other people's items. So we just started being distributors for electronic parts, more electrical battery-based parts. So 2009 was, we began distributing other items that we didn't design. And that was a result in First saying, your Mechanum wheels and your Omni wheels were not going to be legal in 2009. We kept growing. We got through 2009. We moved out of the technology park. We moved into a really big warehouse, 24,000 square feet. It's plenty big. We're never going to grow out of this place. We had to stop. We have a time-lapse video of moving in. We took up maybe 1/3 of the building. 2011. 2018, it was not big enough. We had to move out again. But during this time, between 2004 and 2014, 10 years, and everything we did was outsourced. We didn't have one CNC machine in the building at all. We're lucky to be in Kokomo, Indiana, where there's a huge automotive manufacturing base, and many guys and gals have like CNC equipment in their garages. And there's a lot of small businesses that do mold shops and CNC lathes, CNC mills. So a lot of our stuff is outsourced for pretty cheap. So the need for us to bring it in was pretty low. But we did decide to bring in a router in 2014, and that was our first production equipment for some of our parts. We still today only have one router, CNC router. We have a big old Haas VF4 mill, and we have a Doosan CNC lathe. And that's it, just 3 parts. Most of our stuff is still outsourced, but mostly local. 2016, Mark retired, and his plan was he's about 15 years older than I am, and his plan was to help have fun with his grandkids and tinker on some other local businesses. And then 3 years later, he passed away, and I miss him every day. During that time, we moved to East North Street, which was a larger building. That's red. At the time, we didn't think it was that difficult, but this became very hard because we had some accounting mistakes. We overstepped, and we reached because we thought we were doing better accounting-wise than we were, and we got into this new building. We thought it was fine, and then we had to tighten our belts really quickly because cash flow wasn't the same as what we thought it was. So as an engineer, as a small businessman, you got to make sure your accounting is correct. And that was a strong lesson at that time. We developed a new website, and we went into the new building at the same time. Both of those things were significant high-cost items for us for development. So the lesson learned there was, even though you make a good product and you're a good business person, make sure your accounting is accurate. In 2020, we all dealt with COVID. You guys dealt with it. Everybody dealt with it in different ways. We actually had a study. Once COVID hit in March, took us about a month, and we're like, well, what's going to happen? We don't know what's going to be in the future. So we had a risk assessment study done by our staff in-house, and like what could be the worst case scenarios of different things that could happen. And we made this report. We sent it to First, and we said the worst case scenario for AndyMark was for FRC not to have a new game in 2021. And that's what happened. So we benefit selfishly off of FRC making people build new robots every year. That's a challenge for the teams, obviously, but we make money off of those parts that you buy from us, obviously. So when you don't have a new FRC game and people don't build new FRC robots, we don't get income. So that was tough. So that was what First decided to do. It was the right decision, and I made that very public. Even though it hurt us, it was the right decision to do. And so we had to lay off some people. We offered voluntary layoffs. 5 people took that, and we had 2 more people that we laid off, unfortunately, because we didn't need them. So that wasn't voluntary. So we had 35 full-time people. We laid off 7. We went down to 28 employees. Once we had those 28, now what do? We still don't know exactly how we're going to deal with this COVID stuff. And I got some advice from people and such, and I said, okay, we usually hire part-time people in the winter. We're not going to do that because winter is our busiest time. You guys have most of your orders in the winter. FTC is high, FRC is high. We need most like pick, pack, operations help in the winter. I told our full-time staff, you all need to do whatever it takes to get us through this winter. And even in operations, I'm not going to hire part-time people to come in and take a part-time job because I'd rather pay you your full-time salary, even though if you're a software engineer, you might have to go do pick and pack, or you might have to go deburr parts in the machine shop, or you might have to push a broom. So we had a lot of people at AndyMark working in a small business still that had to really think like a small business, even though they're engineers, software people, business people. Like my HR director was actually in our machine shop, and she was a machinist for the summer of 2020. And her job is HR. She was one of the guys in the machine shop, and it was great. She did very well. But that's what you got to do sometimes to get through a tough time. So if you work for a small business and you want to do software, and the only thing you want to do is software, it might not be good for you to be at a small business, because small businesses might ask you to do something different during some of the tough times. So I found some old products, early products. That was the 2-speed shifter. That was the AM planetary with the sticker on it. And back then, this is another story. Early on, we started our website in 2004. We were on a dial-up. I had a $5 a month AOL account on dial-up at my house, pretty low bandwidth. Our webmaster, I didn't know how to do web stuff, but our webmaster was a college student in Indianapolis. We're about an hour away. I would actually physically take pictures of the products with a red background for some reason. I wasn't thinking very straight. I would put it on a CD-ROM. I would put it in the mail and mail it to him over U.S. postal mail to Indianapolis. He would populate the website. That's how we did this early on, back in the old days, only 17 years ago. A couple years, I forgot this story, but a couple years later, like 2008, 2009, maybe 2000, we still had these red pictures on our website. And a small company who was trying to start, they were transitioning from selling books to selling hardware. They actually called us up and they said, hey, we would like to list your products on our website and sell your hardware. And I said, oh, I'm not ready for that, because one of their stipulations was all your products had to have white backgrounds. We had red backgrounds. I didn't have white backgrounds. So I told Amazon, no, we're not going to list our parts on your website. So sometimes you make mistakes, but still, I don't know if I don't really regret that too much. Amazon takes a pretty good margin from people, so that's fine. Is that the next one? Okay. Use backspace. Okay, so our market, if you didn't know, I mean, you guys are in this market, but we only see a part of the market. I think it's about a $1 to $2 billion market of robot education and robotic competition. It's a 30-year-old market, really started by FIRST. After FIRST came robot combat, education competitions and such, but really FIRST was the starter of this, and that started from Woody's class at MIT. But I don't know these numbers very well, but I think 30%, 40% of school systems in the US have some sort of competition robotics team. Because of that, I think it's a really good idea for the suppliers within this market to work together to help grow the market. We sometimes beat each other up for Vex, Best, other companies that have competitions and such. It's a good idea for us to continue to work together to help grow the market so that all kids in all schools get access to these types of programs that we love. Worldwide, our presence is we sell to all 50 states in the US and about 80 countries worldwide. We have distribution in 11 countries outside of the US. Mary and I enjoy going to places like Turkey where we can help grow events and teams in Turkey. We've been to China on business too for events. It's pretty fun. I get to do that. Go ahead. Our sourcing, I'm pretty proud of the fact that 60% of our sourcing of parts and services come from the state of Indiana. You might not care about Indiana, but that's pretty big for when I talk to like senators or mayors or people in Indiana, so I give this presentation to them. 30% of our sourcing comes from other states. Sheet metal comes from the Midwest, Michigan, Wisconsin, Illinois. Molding, so we have some molding suppliers, other US states. And about 10% of our sourcing comes from overseas. A lot of gearboxes, like small, like the Never Rest motors, sim motors, bearings, chain, small fasteners come from Taiwan or China. About 70% of our business is still FIRST. We've tried in various ways to grow that non-FIRST business over the years. I can tell you different stories about things. But within FIRST, FRC, FTC, FLL, tabletop robotics, we sell a robot table, competition table for FLL, but they use it for other areas, like WRO could use it in other competitions. We sell a lot of parts to colleges who have senior projects and such that are students that used to be on FIRST teams. They go to college, they build something for their project, and it might need to be an AndyMark part. I'm sure there's people in this room that might have done that. We sell a lot to makers and hobbyists, builders, developers, maybe about 15% of our business, anywhere from BattleBots to somebody at Walt Disney World put a tough box on one of the arms of the It's a Small World ride, and there's a tough box doing this. It's a Small World. We have unique projects. Like different companies have contracted us to do engineering for them. When COVID hit, there was this very lovely group of people out of MIT that spec'd out a PG 188 to be the motor that did the AMBO mechanism for the ventilator that was the open source MIT ventilator design. So we sold a boatload of PG 188s to the people who were building these at-home ventilator projects during COVID. When COVID first hit, ventilators were a big thing, and we sold a lot of those motors. We've done projects for Twitch. We've done all kinds of different types of things. We actually are a contract manufacturer for a company called Transcend Robotics or Transcend Tactical. It's a recon robot to get into situations that are dangerous. It climbs stairs, and it provides video and audio to officers who are SWAT team officers or sheriff department people to de-escalate a situation in a dangerous house or trailer or school, and it provides all parties a non-lethal way to de-escalate something. Let them communicate so there's not people that get shot. So we've sold about 160 of these stair climbing robots for Transcend, and we have documented cases where police officers have said that we have literally saved lives with our stair climbing robot. We want to save the lives of the officers. We want to save the lives of the people who are in trouble or causing trouble inside, both cases. Our customer base, this is another thing when I talk to Indiana people, only 2% of our customers are from Indiana, so that's important to them. That means we're bringing in money from our customers, and we're spending it here. We're spending it in Indiana locally. So some lessons learned. If I've got time for some stories, back in 2008 and 9, as this young lady was very bright to say, we have a bad timing situation where we took on a pickup truck product called Tech Tray. A friend of ours invented this. It was an elevated tray for the back of your F-150 pickup or your Dodge pickup. The idea was to provide contractors a shelf for them to store their tools and stuff on top, put their wood and boards underneath. And it was great. We were going to save time for contractors. It cost about $900. But in 2008 and 2009, contractors didn't have any money to spend on saving time. They just wanted another job because, as she said, we had a recession. It was tough. We also did not know the market at all. In order to sell to the truck accessory market, you got to sell to a wholesaler, and then they sell a distributor, and then they sell it to an end user. And by the time you do that multi-tier distribution, everybody wants their 20 to 25% margin. So if the product was selling for $900, we were only getting paid like $400 to $450, and that was our cost. We couldn't deal with that. So for those two reasons, we were out. Machine Keys in Colorado. This is an old story. I don't remember the team. I don't remember the year. But it was a Friday afternoon, about 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. I think it wasn't during build season because the team that called from Colorado, they said, we have a demo tomorrow. Our robot doesn't work because we're missing a machine key. I want to order a 2mm machine key for my sim motor, and you need to overnight it to us and Saturday delivery to us in Colorado tomorrow. Our demo is in the afternoon. We need this machine key right away. At that moment, we could have said, yeah, this 75-cent machine key, I'm going to overnight it to you for $25, $30, and then another $15 or $20 Saturday delivery. I'm going to get $50 from you for a machine key that really cost me a whole heck of a lot less than 75 cents. Or I could just grab that money right then, put $50 in my pocket, be happy. Or I can say, hang on, this is a demo. Do you have a nail? Do you have a copper wire that would fit in that 2mm machine keyway? Go find a finishing nail that's about 2 millimeters in diameter, put it in that groove, and I bet you can run your demo. Yeah, that makes sense, he was saying. So we, at the same time, after that call, I went and got a machine key or two. I taped them to a piece of paper, put it in an envelope, sent it to him, put a stamp on the piece of on the envelope. He got it the next week. But he didn't need a machine key tomorrow. He needed a solution. So for free, I gave him the solution, and I bought myself a loyal customer. So even though I could have made $50, I didn't want $50. I wanted a loyal customer. And I tell that to our staff because that's the mentality I want us to have as customer service folks. Be open to new opportunities. Mary's brother is a priest, so he's at our church. He's given out the body of Christ at our church during COVID. It's hard to do that without masks and a shield. So the church asked us to make a shield for her brother to give out communion. Just one little shield. So we made that. it took some time, not much of an effort. But then that led to 4 schools in the area buying sneeze guards, Lexan pieces. I think we sold like $35,000 worth of Lexan and extrusions and that kind of stuff that really helped us out, kept our guys busy, and it gave us some good income during a time when we lost income because robot teams weren't buying many parts the summer of 2020. So that was a new opportunity that we were open to that wasn't in our market. Collaboration and competition. As I said before, I do think that we, different vendors within our market, need to work together continually to grow the market. As our pie gets bigger, our slice of the pie also gets bigger. So if our percentage of the market stays the same, our piece of pie could get bigger if the market gets bigger. One example of collaboration that we had, it was a small one, but it was pretty impactful. It was a few years ago. What was this? There was a school in Florida that had a shooting, and it was sad. A person went in and shot some people in a school. Marjorie Taylor. Yes. The Douglas School. Yes. They had a robotics team, and the robotics team couldn't get into the robot. So I called some people, figured out who the right person was, collaborated with Vex and Rev across the road. We all collaborated, put some parts in some boxes, sent it down there to the school, and they got them, and I think they built a robot with them. So we all collaborated to help this sad situation get a little bit better, maybe. So collaboration in that sense does happen. There's been times when we run out of bearings, and we'll buy bearings from Vex. Everybody knows that they're our competitor, but we'll buy bearings from Vex, and we'll resell them so we can keep things in stock. So we'll do that once in a while. So yeah, those are some lessons learned. From the pandemic specifically, being flexible, being open to new opportunities, like I said. You can't make everybody happy, including some of your employees. So we had to make some tough decisions to lay some people off. We had to make some tough decisions because of pandemic supply chain issues to not have some things in stock, and that hurt us sometimes. We were surprised, I'm sure you guys have been too, that people do thrive in unique ways. We had a lot of people that worked from home. It was easy for some of the engineers and business people to work from home, but we had hourly employees that worked from home. They would actually take inventory home with them, do assembly work, and then bring it back. They would take like thousands of dollars worth of parts home with them. That was kind of risky. They would bring it back. We'd do a count when it left, and we'd do a count when it come back, and they would make parts from us, and that was a way for them to stay employed. So most of them thrived. A few of them didn't, and that's okay. We were very flexible with them, again, with the flexibility. If they were having, the people that didn't thrive, we had them come back in. We have a really big warehouse, as I told you, and we would just make sure they were in an isolated location so they could do some work. We actually sold gift cards to restaurants in our local community because we have e-commerce and they didn't. So we sold gift cards to an Indian restaurant, a brew pub, a flower shop, and somebody else. I think there was 4 gift cards we were selling. We didn't sell a lot, but that helped local community businesses keep some revenue going when they didn't have an e-commerce solution. When we did, it was easy for us. And again, I appreciated having a good accountant during this time because we were able to apply for all of the federal programs that helped out small businesses like us. We took the PPP twice, and I have a great accounting guy now who does that. And during this time when you have a business crunch and such, we worked very closely with all of our suppliers to let them know exactly how we're doing, how is our revenue going, when our payments are coming, those kinds of things. So I learned that communication during tough financial times is a key thing to make sure your partners and suppliers know what's up. Any questions? Yes? Okay, Transcend called us up. It was a cold call. They were calling a lot of people in the business, in our industry, and they said, we have this patented stair climbing mechanism for robots, and I'm interested because stair climbing is hard. So they do have a patent on this. And we said, we would love to grow our business outside of First because we would like to have other businesses outside of First. So we partnered with them pretty closely on the design. We did a lot of development for them that both of us benefited from. And yeah, we kind of just dated for a while. I met up with them at the San Francisco Regional, actually introduced them to teams, and I introduced them to key teams at the San Francisco Regional because that's where they're from. And I had them talk to key teams who are our customers, and I had those customers honestly tell our new customer, we had our existing customers, teams, tell our new prospective customers what they thought about us without us being there. So I let, like, the usual suspects in San Francisco tell these guys what they thought of us. Does that answer your question? Yes?
How did you guys go about negotiating the patent?
Their patent, Transcend's patent?
Yeah.
It's a manufacturing agreement. So we are their sole manufacturer for their stair climbing robot with their IP, and it's until a certain date. If we were to sell a different robot that's not one that they're selling, if we were to sell a different robot, we would pay them a royalty for that. Does that make sense? Yes?
Between FRC and FTC, which one generates like more business for you?
That's a good question. Last year, it probably was FTC. FRC was pretty stale last year. Percentages were very low with FRC sales. Percentages were pretty darn strong with FTC. I've told people publicly, FTC during COVID was 75% of what it usually is. Early on in First, we did nothing with FTC. And FVC became FTC, and we got involved a little by little. But now we're not half and half, but we're getting close to half and half of that 70% of our business. So we're doing more and more with FTC. And if you've noticed, we just recently posted a mechanical engineering position, and we hired a new position that is one of the must-haves on the job description was must-have FTC experience. So most of us within AndyMark, I think people know this, most of us come from FRC. But this new person has FTC team experience, and that's going to help us with FTC. Good question. Yes?
You mentioned one of your customer bases was contract engineering for college students and career projects. Do you have a ballpark figure on your rate for that?
Not quite. I'll answer this, but there was contract engineering for companies. Like there was a big company that paid us a lot of money to develop an Omni wheel. So that was one. And our rate depends on what the person's doing. I think we'll charge up to $100 an hour for that rate for us to do engineering work for a company. The collegiate things I was talking about was we sell products to people in college for their senior projects. So they're just buying hardware from us, just like a First team would, for them to build their, like Kettering will have a snowplow robot. We've sold a lot of snowplow robot parts to Kettering because they build these remote control robots that plow snow. There's two students walking our door a couple months ago. It was a First student and an anthropology student. And the first alumni was helping his friend who's the anthropology student. I think it's anthropology, correct me if I'm wrong, but she was making a robotic mechanism that was mimicking animal bites on tissues. So they would 3D print teeth and whatever, but the mechanism was using AndyMark pneumatics and gearboxes to do the chomping of a wolf or a dog or a wolverine, different forces, different pressures, different teeth sizes for this anthropology project. So those are senior projects that we sell parts to. Yes?
Do you think you would, because you're bringing out if it wasn't for First, like
Definitely no. I'm not sure if I'd be standing here right now if I didn't win the Woody Flowers Award in 2003. I'm not sure if I wouldn't be standing here if I didn't make many compromises with my wife about letting me start this company. There was a time in the 2001 LA Regional, I was the lead robot inspector. Mary was out with a friend seeing LA. She comes back to pick me up, and it couldn't have been better timing, but a kid comes up to me and asks me for my autograph. I'm not sure why. She sees me sign this thing for this kid. This is a true story. And she's like, oh my gosh. And that was supposed to be my last year in first was supposed to be 2001. Swear to God. On the flight home, she says, what did you say? Yeah. So, yes, I'm here because of first. Yeah. How's the supply chain look for the next year? Oh, I was supposed to be repeating these questions. Sorry. How's the supply chain work for the next year? I think it's loosening up a little bit. One thing that was surprising to us is extrusions. Extrusions are hard to get. Like right now, we can't sell FRC field perimeters. That's one of our products is the FRC of field perimeter. It's very expensive compared to robot parts, but we've sold a lot of them, and they're hard to get. So extrusions are hard to get. Sheets of plastic were hard to get during FTC production. So the shipping hubs in FTC this past year were hard. We ordered a bunch, we got a bunch, and then we needed more, and they were hard to get. So it was a sheet of plastic that was hard to get. That was weird. Things might be opening up, but then again, it's all dependent on COVID. Like right now in Taiwan, COVID has gotten worse. I think in China, they've had another little wave. So those things are ripple effects to us. So it's hard to say. Yes, Lucian.
So over the years, what are your favorite and most memorable products?
My favorite and most memorable products over the year. Number one product, in my opinion, for me, is the churro. I love the churro. It's super simple. If you don't know what all the churro does, then you're missing out. It's great. And it was just I'll get to more products too, a little bit, but I wanted to make a lightweight hex shaft that could be a structure member and also transmit power during lightweight situations like conveyor belts, not power on your robot, like drivetrain power or an arm. So I took a half-inch shaft, put it in a vise, put a box wrench on it, and I stripped it. And where you strip that half-inch shaft were the areas of the churro that are still there. And the divot in the middle of the churro are the areas that didn't get stripped. So that wasn't providing any torque. And then the middle of the hole is whatever quarter 20 screw we spec'd out. That's the specified hole diameter for a screw that you thread into a hole as a self-threading screw. You're not supposed to tap a churro. You're supposed to thread the screw in yourself, and it's kind of hard the first time, but it stays there. And I took it home, put it on the dinner table. That's what we did. And Rachel, my oldest daughter, says, that looks like a churro. There we go. More products. I think Mark's effort with developing the Mechanum wheel early on was a big deal. Mark really was the guy that worked on Mechanum wheels. We didn't invent the Mechanum wheel. That was invented in 1971 over in Europe. But we brought the Mechanum wheel to a commercial position after seeing it from FRC Team 357. They had gesture drive. They were out in Philadelphia. They kind of surprised everybody with this Mechanum drive back in 2004, 2005. It's not the most competitive thing in FRC, but it's pretty neat to see. But oh my gosh, an FTC, I mean, how many FTC robots are on the third floor over here not running Mechanum? That'd be an interesting question to know. There's probably 80% of those robots over there are running Mechanum, I bet. Who's here from FTC? They're mostly running Mechanum over there, right? Am I right? And I'm pretty proud of that our company had a big impact on that. Right now, as you and I were talking, some of our Mechanum wheels are not as good as some of our competitors' Mechanum wheels. We have to do better, right? Because we came up with a Mechanum wheel, and somebody else gets a better one, a better one, a better one. We gotta respond to that. But Lucian, I'm pretty proud of Mechanum wheels having an impact in the market. Yeah, Freddie. Okay, my biggest regret might be the Amazon thing. I didn't know where that was going to lead, but we were offered by First when TI didn't want to make the Jaguar anymore. We should have grabbed that. I didn't grab it. IFI grabbed it, and they had a corner on speed controllers at the time. Across the road, eventually came out with the Talon, and that competed with the Victor. No one used the Jaguar anymore, but we should have grabbed the Jaguar. We should have developed something else along with it. That's a missed opportunity. I deeply regret that. Because it was designed with help from First. So First had IP, so they had to approve somebody to grab that and get that product. Yeah. And do we have any projects in the work right now that we're developing that I can talk about? Okay. Thanks, Stokely. Yes, Mary's right. So we have a few things in the AndyMark booth. We have a West Coast drive that's new that doesn't use tensioners on the end wheels. It's just center to center. We believe it's going to be pretty cool. It's not the kit chassis. It's just a West Coast drive. We have a bevel gearbox that the engineers have come up with. We have a really compact linear box lift system. We have one that's pretty big, that's a 2x1, like an elevator system that was used a lot in Power Up. But it's pretty bulky and big. We have a cam follower version of like a 1x1 lift system. So if you look at that, it's on the floor in the AndyMark booth. You can check that out. We got some new, this isn't really new, but we have some new products that came out that are never S motors with new ratios. We have some things we're working on this summer. I mean, I think we're telling people this, but we're working on a better Mechanum wheel. We know we got to do better. We're getting beat up in the Mechanum wheel market with FTC. You don't see a lot of AndyMark wheels on FTC robots anymore. And that kind of hurts, so we got to recover from that. There's other things. We have a new director of engineering. Go meet her. Her name is Micah. She's great. We're hiring 2 new engineers. One's name's Jonathan, one's name's Peyton. So with 2 new staff members of engineering and 1 new engineering director, I'm excited to see what they come up with as developers. We hire interns. We have a couple interns with us this summer. So if anybody wants to intern, we usually do that in the summer. Yes? Right.
Have you thought of anything that you might design or whatever that you would deliver by CAD so people can print? In other words, do the design work for them and then sell the file?
So he's asking, with the popularity of printing, have we thought about selling the CAD or the design instead of the part, so teams can use the step file or the solid part file so they can print something? No, I haven't thought about selling the file. We actually have a page on our website. We don't advertise it much, but we have a step file or a print file page, like a case for a NavX or other types of things. And actually, we should do this more. Teams come to us with CAD that says, this is a great 3D print CAD piece that's great for this application, whatever it is, FTC, FLLF, FRC. And you guys should host it. So we put it up on the website. We have to vet it out a little bit, make sure it's okay. We kind of have to, if we're putting it on our website, we're endorsing it. So we have to make sure it's right. But no, I've not thought about selling that. Not sure how to do that. But we as engineers, that's how we have to figure out how to do things, right? So maybe that's something we should figure out. I think there's a lot of 3D printed Mechanums that are used as vectored intake wheels. That's the thing now, like for getting the ball to the center of the intake. A lot of people are using Mechanums as vectored intake wheels. So there's a lot of 3D printed parts of that. So, and there's a lot of different models out there that use that. So that whole market is kind of, we thought about selling 3D printers a couple years ago, but that whole market's moving so fast. It's like I didn't want to tie my boat to one, and then a year later something else is a lot better. So I've stayed away from 3D printing hardware at least. But the software, yeah, maybe we could think about that. Yes. Climber in a box question. Okay. Yeah. So how long have you been in? So he's asking how long will the Climber in a Box be available in the future? How long have you been in first?
This is my 5th year.
Okay, 5th year. So what did we do in Power Up? At the end of the game, what did we do in Power Up? Yes, FRC Power Up. And we're on the switch. What you balance the cubes, the boxes on the switch. What do we do at the end of the game? Remember? We pulled ourselves up. In 2020, on the teeter-totter switch inside I forget the names of things, but what did we do in 2020 to get points at the end of the game? We lifted up. In 2016, Stronghold, what do you do at the end of the game to get up to the tower? You lift it up. So what do you think my answer is? Yes. So we and West Coast Drive and ThriftyBot all saw the need at the same time that a climber system is overdue in first. We all saw that. No one told us, you all three need to make those things. We all just, 2016, actually 2013, 2016, 2018, 2020, everybody needed a climber. And let's do one. So, yes. Good question. Yes. Thank you. So you're talking about CAD being available on the website. This is an important thing to us. Sometimes we don't have all the CAD available. If we don't, for a part that you want, beat on us. Send us an email, customerservice@andymark.com. But I'll tell you a story. I have a friend, I'm not going to say who it was, but in 2005, we had our trick wheels. You saw those goofy wheels that were the predecessor of the Omni wheel. He goes on Chief Delphi and he says, I got the CAD off of the AndyMark website, and instead of paying $80 for this wheel, this Omni wheel, I made my own wheel. Ha, ha, ha. And I replied to him, I was like, that's okay. That's why we give you the CAD. We realize we're selling to an education community. If you don't have the money to buy the wheel, then use the CAD to make your own wheel. That's fine. You're not stealing anything from us. We're giving you that CAD for free to do your overall robot design or to make your part from our CAD. That's fine. So I have no qualms about giving out CAD most of the time. There's a few things that we don't, but most of the parts, we'll give out the CAD. How much time do we have? Yeah, Stokely.
So, I've been in this for a long time, and people used to ask, well, who makes money on first? And I said, and this is going way back. I used to always say there are two people allowed to make money first, FedEx and AndyMark. Right? and now I'm obviously expanding that a little more.
Sure.
More vendors. But you have absolutely, as a company, lived up to that endorsement from everybody. And, as evidence, we're here listening to your story, and, we understand it. Your approach to business is one of the reasons we believe you're successful, and why we want to keep doing business with you. So, there you go.
That means a lot. Thanks. Yes. We've got our third daughter going to a state school in Indiana. We have another daughter graduating this year from a state school in Indiana, and we still only have one house. Yeah, we're happy. We're happy. We're rich in what we value. Yes. It certainly kind of reminds me of something. And this is back to my point about they're not in this room, but the competitors that we have, we always need to consider working together. I'm very proud of the fact that many of the vendors that you use within the first FRC, especially FRC community, they first started selling their parts through us. Where did Rev sell their parts first? Through AndyMark. Where did RC and West Coast started selling his parts through? Through AndyMark. Where did across the road, Mike and Omar, where did they start selling their parts through? It was through AndyMark. So we believe we're going to help other entrepreneurs in this market grow their businesses. They might become our competitors. That sometimes sucks. That sometimes takes away some money from us. But we're building the pie bigger. We're making parts better for you in the market so you can sustain your teams, you can grow teams in your market, and I believe that's the way to work within this market. Until that number of 30 to 40% of all high schools in our country have grown into like 80 or 90%, then I need to be very vocal and say that we need to work together. Sometimes we frustrate each other to all ends, and we don't talk to each other for a year or two. But eventually, we get along, us and other suppliers. Does that make sense? Anything else? Yes?
So say next year we get the water data. How quickly would AndyMark be able to come up with the next necessary?
Your shirt says ready for the water game by 2004.
Yes. Well, there are water games, actually. Have you seen the movie Spare Parts? Have anybody seen the movie Spare Parts? It's a movie with George Lopez, Marissa Tomei. No, check out that movie. Freddie's the star of that movie. My friend Freddie back here. It's his team's story when an underwater robotics team out of Chandler High School in Arizona beat all these college teams, MIT, Berkeley, all these high school teams of immigrants and undocumented kids beat the MITs at their game in an underwater robotics competition. See the movie, listen to Freddie. Freddie, wave your hand, say know who you are. He's a wonderful man. But there are underwater, like Sea Perch is an underwater robotics competition. What else is there, Freddie?
Marine Advanced Technology Education Center National Army Championship. If you like autonomy, RoboNation, which is the equivalent of first for autonomous vehicles, holds it land, air, surface, underwater. The underwater one's called RoboSub.
RoboSub, Mate.
30 minutes autonomous.
Whoa. So it's out there. It's a good joke. It's a good running joke. Even the kids, the rookie kids on the team I'm on, they're like getting into this underwater robot, like water game joke. Okay, that's great. But it's out there. If they want to do that, I would encourage, like some of the cheaper ones would be Sea Perch, right? That's probably the cheapest one. Sea Perch. I'm not I have nothing to do with Sea Perch. I've never been to a Sea Perch event, but I would recommend it, I guess. So check it out. Good question. Anything else? So a couple people, maybe to these two young women here, Mary, give them T-shirts because they asked questions early. So Mary had a couple T-shirts to give out. Anything else? Any other questions? How much time do we have? What time is it? 3:30. All right. Well, good. Thank you all. Oh, one more question right here.
Yeah, I was wondering, so I wasn't able to come to the first 10 minutes of it. So how did you come up with like the idea for AndyMark? Like, how did you get into this?
Like the name AndyMark or just, because that's a different story. Okay. Okay, so that's a good question. Maybe I didn't even answer that. I was on a team. I'm on a team, Team 45. I'm still on that team now. But Mark and I and another guy were talking about selling gearboxes to the first community. Actually had a gearbox. I showed it to Tony and Bob, who run IFI. I said, would IFI want to sell this gearbox? And they said, no, we don't want to get in that market.